Tony Ruiz, contributing editor at Gold Derby, here with OT Fagbenle, who has not one but two kind of star turns this season with the First Lady and WeCrashed. And OT, I want to actually start with WeCrashed because I think the character of Cameron really took me off guard, because I think I expected him to be one thing, and then by the end, I got something that I wasn't quite expecting. And I think you know where I'm going with that. But just when you first saw this script, what was the first thing that you responded to with him?
I kind of saw, I went to school with a lot of guys who went into finance just by chance. And there are a lot of characters amongst them. And there was something about, it was written so well. And I was like, oh, I know this guy. And also, I like even more specifically, I know a version of this guy, which would be really fun to play. And but I didn't know if that's entirely how they intended the part to be or whatever. So anyway, before we had our first meeting, I just thought, I'm just going to shave my head, and I'm going to just be like, I'm going to go in like, this is specifically like how I want to play, how I see the part or whatever. And they responded really well, and they were up to me doing it in an English accent. And so it was a really great collaboration like that.
And you really can't talk about Cameron without that final speech, that final monologue. I think I would have to imagine that when you see that monologue as an actor, does it like give you tingles when you get a speech like that? I've heard, that's what people have told me, is that when it's like, ooh, so exciting.
Yeah, because that speech wasn't written when I agreed to do the part. So I was kind of going a bit on faith, but the writing so far had been so good. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna trust these guys. And then I read it and I was like, whoa, this is good. I mean, it's challenging in a way, because in some ways you're like telling a group of people their dreams are, dog do. And they should cheer at the end of that speech, so it's quite a challenging one, but I relished it.
He's a pragmatist, I think. I think he's so pragmatic in the way he looks at everything, and the whole line about like, no, there are no unicorns, there are no
right.
The unicorn thing just cracked me up.
Right.
So when you're tackling a speech like that, are you thinking about, okay, about threading a line between this is supposed to be motivational, but it's also kind of, for lack of a better term, dickish?
Yeah, it's funny because to some extent, I guess one of the main drives within Cameron, from my perspective, is a very paternal one, and not necessarily in the best way, maybe in a patronizing paternal way. And so to my mind, it was like a daddy telling people exactly what he thought should be done in the pull your socks up kind of daddy, So all I had to do was tell these kids and get them on the straight and narrow. That's my one job.
So I'm just curious, you give that speech. What was the atmosphere on set like after you deliver that? I mean, how did people react to you after that?
It was a very supportive atmosphere, I have to say. Like all the actors around were just so great and up for it. And every now and then I'd go off book and start ad-libbing, and sometimes I'd come off and people would be cracking out and like, I can't believe you said that, or whatever, so and then even start pitching me other ones. I'd be like, you could say that, So it was a really supportive, and there was a great vibe. There's a great reaction to it. I mean, I kind of had a lot of confidence after we'd done a couple of takes.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as a speech that you can do if you don't have any confidence. So you have that, but then parallel to that, you're playing Barack Obama, and I've talked to people who have played, prominent, famous people before, and I always get a different reaction in terms of when the opportunity is presented. When you get that opportunity, is that intimidating, or do you see it as a challenge, as an exciting challenge?
Oh, I think a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, obviously it's intimidating, but I was very curious about the process, and also like, I didn't want to do it at all costs. I mean, funny enough, I've actually turned down the opportunity to play a couple of real life people before, which I would have loved to play, but it just for whatever various reasons, it wasn't quite right. And this one seemed like just such a perfect opportunity to try out this challenge, and having a team around, like our wonderful director, and having Viola Davis there and everything, was just like, okay, great, then let's go.
So in playing a real person, are you, of course, because President Obama has such a distinct speech pattern, is it difficult to thread the line between impression and playing a real character?
Yeah, I guess that's one way of putting it. I think in a way it's like I'm just trying to. I mean, it's like, I'm not focusing on the end. I'm not focusing on, oh, is that too much of an impression, or because I'm trying to ideally get to a place where I'm not being self-conscious about things. So I'm trying to create an affinity and understanding and like a physical, visceral empathy with the character, which means that I can try and exude my experience of Barack. And so what I'm aiming for is a less self-conscious, like, what does the end of this look like? And more kind of like process orientated. How do I best connect and create an affinity between me and him?
Did you do a lot of like independent research about Barack, as kind of behind the scenes?
Oh, yeah.
Necessarily the public face that we all saw.
Yeah, no, totally. The only thing is that he's been in politics quite a long time, and so it's quite hard. And but look, he's got some autobiographies, and so that's a great insight into at least the way he sees his life. And I've watched some documentaries and stuff like that, and but it's interesting as someone who, because he's been aware of himself being on the public stage for so much of his life, it's somewhat curated, and it I guess takes some artistic interpretation to read between the lines of certain things, I guess.
What kind of interaction do you, when I spoke to Susanna Bier about this, she this whole project really is spanning so much real estate in terms of all the time periods and threading these stories together. What was your working relationship like with her?
I loved it, and I hope I get to do it some more. I mean, she's very forthright, but like, she doesn't like couch things very much. She doesn't like it, she'll say it. She likes it, she likes it. She's a real force of nature, a real kind of like a person who has very little intolerance for what she feels is truthful to the moment, and that's really refreshing. It's kind of like, it's a very engaging experience.
And the interplay between you and Viola as Michelle Obama, it feels like a real marriage and not just like some sort of fairy tale marriage. You see the cracks, you see the hard work that they take, and the conflict. Did you and Viola have conversations about how you wanted to go explore that?
Yeah, I think we did, but I think also it's all there on the page, kind of thing, for us to kind of explore. But also, I think Viola is just a very grounded individual. She's a very real person, and I also kind of aspire to create characters which are real and grounded, and we get to see the dirt under the fingernails a little bit. So I think both of us, as we kind of like, and also I felt like we had a great chemistry as well. Just like, just naturally, luckily, you never know, with another actor, you get there, do you have that ephemeral, unknowing thing called chemistry? And I felt like we did, and that really, I think, bolstered everything we did.
One of the things that struck me was how oftentimes, unsure of himself Obama was at times, and how sometimes he needed to be pushed.
Right.
Did you, in playing him and in doing your research, was there things about him that surprised you?
Oh yeah, so many things. I mean, most of the stuff was in his early life, revisiting, thinking about, his life before getting to Chicago, really, which is, I think, where his like public life really started. But yeah, so many. He's just such an extraordinary character in so many ways. I thought the tension between, the fact that Michelle really didn't want him to run for president, and I thought that tension was really fascinating on a kind of like just an interpersonal level. What happens if your spouse who really doesn't want you to take a job, and you feel like that job is your calling? Like, how do you resolve that? And I thought that tension was really interesting.
Is it difficult to, because I think for a lot of people, Susanna talked about this being Danish and taking on this very American political dynasty, that she used the term American royalty. Is there something that helps in terms of, putting a kind of a safe distance between yourself and kind of the mythology of these people?
Yeah, I think so, possibly. I didn't get to talk to Barack despite my President Obama, despite my attempts, but in some ways, I thought when I look back at it, I thought actually it's probably for the best. Like because you'd speak to someone, you have a kind of feel like you owe them something to some extent. They've probably taken you to their confidence or whatever, and so, I think in some ways having some distance and just like a desire not to make fairy tale people, but make real ones.
Your career is, with The Handmaid's Tale has, really kind of, I think, changed the trajectory of your career and these opportunities. But you take on such a variety of types of roles, and it's not something that everybody can do very well. What do you think is the secret to your ability to basically cover the range of people that you get to play?
I think, I guess starting, I have an interest in doing that. Like, I like doing that. And then I had my training. I went to RADA, and that was a really great training for that kind of diversity. But also, I kind of feel like my own personal philosophy about it isn't that I'm playing lots of different characters. It's more like I have a lot of different characters in me, and my job is to uncover those. So the process of becoming other people is also a process of self-discovery and sharing of oneself. And so I think that's one of the ways I look at it.
It's interesting you mentioned, RADA. There seems to always be this kind of what's the word, a schism between the concept of, British acting methodology and American acting. Do you subscribe to that theory, or is it just different methods for different people?
Yeah, because I think different methods, different people. Like like Stanislavski is Russian, Meisner I think was American. Like, so, like, a lot of the acting coaches or methodologies that I use are American, and so even though, so I don't know, and saying that, if I was to make a list of my top 10 favorite actors, I don't know if any of them went to RADA, so.
Oh God. These two series, what I find so interesting about them is that they are in many ways both period pieces and historical, but they're also so relevant and contemporary. Do you see kind of a connection between the two shows?
Well, yeah, they're both about real life people, real life events, and so so that's a strong chord about powerful, charismatic people. So I think, yeah, there are a lot of connections between them.
I as I was watching the First Lady in particular, there was a moment where I feel like Barack was kind of getting it from all sides, from both his kids and from his wife. And I'm just curious, they always say never act with animals or children. How did you work with the two young actresses who played your children?
Well, actually, it was more than two. There's four of them altogether who played the different ones, and they were just amazing. Story and Sanaya and Lexi and oh no, I've forgotten the little one's name, but Yeah, just really remarkable. And she was brilliant, by the way. If you have to IMDb her, please, everybody, and go and look her up, because those kids, I think, are stars, all of them. The casting director did an amazing job at getting them. And of course, you know, we've seen Sanaa and King Richard and stuff, and you know, just mind-boggling how brilliant they are as actors. But also, you know, we would talk, you know, Lexi and Sanaa and I would chat between takes, and we talk philosophy and politics and meditation. They're so smart, so evolved human beings. I'm like, my goodness, if I was as smart as that as a teenager.
God, if I was as smart as that now. Sometimes. So when you approach what's the first thing that grabs you when it comes time to decide if you're going to take on a project? Is it the writing? Is it the people you're working with?
I mean, the writing is a huge thing. Like, it almost, if the writing isn't there, then nothing else really can sway me. And then people I'm working with is very motivating as well. Doesn't hurt to get paid, I'll tell you that much.
That is probably one of the most honest answers to that question I've ever had. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout the season. Oti Fagbenle, it was a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.